Nowhere to go, brother.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I am Elsie Scott. I am the director of the Ronald Walters Center at Howard University, as well as a steward here at Metropolitan AME.
My name is Dana Williams. I am Dean of the Graduate School at Howard University, as well as the fortunate wife of this gentleman who happens to be the pastor of Metropolitan AME Church. And Elsie and I are co-directors for this NEH project that you'll hear a little bit more about.
Okay, we are excited about today's forum on reparations, and especially excited because we have Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright here with us. First, let us tell you a little bit about the program. Metropolitan AME has a long history of hosting public conversations of particular interest to the African American community. Metropolitan was, in fact, the home of the Bethel Literary and Historical Societies. This was a group in which historians recognized it was recognized by historians as a perennial debating society and forum among African Americans during the post-Reconstruction period. It was founded here at this church in December 1881 by Bishop Daniel Alexander Payne. The association was born, at least in part, in response to a growing need among African Americans to consider how they might best respond to the challenges onset by the failures of Reconstruction.
Bethel 21 is inspired by the rich history of the Bethel Literary and Historical Association, but it is by no means an effort to displace it. Rather, it serves as a reminder that Black people have always been about the business of gathering as a community and of inviting our best thinkers to help us to consider seriously the options before us. Today is no exception. Today's program is a part of a grant project funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and in collaboration with the Ronald Walters Center and the Moreland Spingarn Research Center at Howard University and Metropolitan AME Church. The project has three primary objectives: to organize 6 lectures on humanities topics, to host 4 forums on civic issues, and to digitize the holdings of the Bethel Literary and Historical Association. We are proud to announce the completion of the last part of this project, the digitization of the Bethel Literary and Historical Association's holdings. You can now view the full collection of the Bethel's holdings online by visiting www.dh.howard.edu. Take a look at a few of the images we've curated here for a teaser. They're showing on the screens now. You'll see everything from resolutions, minutes to meetings, and invitations and programs. Of course, you're also free to visit the reading room at the Moreland Spingarn Research Center, where if you don your white gloves, you can touch them. We encourage you to do so.
To date, we've held a lecture on ancestry, and that was a big turnout. And also, we had a forum on school choice. The next session will be held on March 6th, where we'll be discussing women in politics. Stay tuned for more information on that particular forum. We're delighted to have the opportunity to host Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright today to address the topic of reparations.
Dr. Wright will offer opening remarks, and then he will be joined in conversation by Dr. Greg Carr, Chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard. Their conversation will be followed by a question and answer period, so we look forward to hearing from you also. Now, please welcome the pastor of Metropolitan AME Church, Reverend William H. Lamar IV, who will invite the spirit of Martin Luther King into this place as we celebrate this holiday, and he will also introduce our featured speaker, Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. We welcome you to Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church. It is my great honor to serve with wonderful people as pastor. On this day, as we consider the legacy of Martin King, it's important for us as the church not to extend the propaganda of the nation around who Dr. King was. It's important for us to remember that he challenged capitalism at its core, corresponding to Coretta in the 50s, that he was more socialistic than capitalistic in his economic outlook, that he challenged the very way that we order ourselves as a nation, that he called the United States of America the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. And if you look at the imperial footprint of America, not much has changed from that day to this day. That Martin Luther King is lauded by corporations and political leaders who in 1967, when he spoke out against the Vietnam War, would not have been caught dead in a photograph with him or standing next to him. And middle-class black preachers like myself were petrified to be associated with Dr. King. At the time of his death, he had a 50% unfavorable rating amongst black people and a 73% unfavorable rating amongst whites. So the question is, what caused Ronald Reagan to sign a holiday in his honor, except to transform him into a cuddly mascot of America? And that's not who he was. He challenged at the core the premises of this nation and called this nation to be true in practice to what it was on paper. And because of that grand legacy that we are called to extend on this day, I'm glad to welcome Dr. Jeremiah Wright. Now let me share with you something from my own past. I was politicized much by listening to hip hop, listening to Chuck D, listening to KRS-One. And there was a poet philosopher by the name of Christopher Wallace. Some of you all are familiar with the late, great poet philosopher Christopher Wallace, who in one of his great poetic feats wrote, "I let my tape rock till my tape popped." And I was one of the young men who, at a very early age, subscribed to the tape ministry of Jeremiah Wright. In the 1980s, I was getting cassette tapes from Chicago listening to his preaching, and I played the tapes so much that they popped. I would fix them and they would pop again. Because not only had the tape popped, but my mind exploded that there was a preacher who could remain black while preaching the gospel. There was a preacher who was not, as many of my comrades, a white evangelical in blackface. There was a preacher who was not ashamed of our ancestry, not ashamed of Nat Turner, not ashamed of Denmark Vesey, not ashamed of Ida Wells, not ashamed of Fannie Lou, not ashamed of the radicals in our past, and through his preaching and ministry brought them forward into the present age. He was daring before many of us even considered risking ministry in the interest of being courageous. I remember when he preached in the early 80s, his series, late 80s rather, the Good News series. He preached a sermon entitled Good News for Homosexuals, where he welcomed into the body of God our LGBTQIA brothers and sisters. He was castigated by black preachers, but beloved by the folk who realized that God's gospel and goodness is for all humanity and not just for a certain few. I'm thankful to God that he is among us, that he is sharp of mind, and that he is willing to share. Finally, I thank God for the gracious way that he has responded when he has been assaulted by forces in the culture. He has not allowed what has been said about him to truncate his ministry or to silence his voice, to attenuate his gracious prophetic critique. When the former president of the United States and his wife rolled a bus over him, he continued to speak. When the former president of the United States and his wife rolled a bus over him, he continued to speak. When the former president of the United States and his wife rolled the bus over him, he continued to speak. He said then, and I will quote him, that tomorrow, this man will continue to do the work of a politician, but on tomorrow, our work continues to be the work of the grand black prophetic tradition. Brothers and sisters, it is a pleasure for me to present to you the present day's epitome of the grand black prophetic tradition, the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright.
Pastor Lamar and members of the Bethel Literary and Historical Society, Bethel 21, to two of my mentors, Dr. Gregory Carr and Dr. Dana Williams Lamar. I thank you for the invitation and for the privilege of being in your midst. Please notice I said my mentors. Those of you who've been through the educational process know how difficult it is to try to say something in front of your mentor, so you pray for me. I told them I was not going to open this session. No, I told Dr. Carr I was not going to open this time together by playfully quoting a prophet that all of you love deep, particularly those of you who are OGs like me, Prophet, Pastor, Dr. Richard Pryor.
Yes, sir.
Because the issue of reparations is such a contentious issue with a long, long history as it pertains to Africa, Africans, and persons of African descent, I will set the parameters within which I can offer my comments, my reflections, my report, and my position. In other words, I'm going to try my best to stay in my lane. I am a retired pastor. They call this self-identification or self-disclosure. I am the founder, or one of the three founders, of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, the other two being the Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III and Dr. Iva Elaine Carruthers, born and bred AME. You'll see the report on the screen, which we will get to later, has her name on it. She is our CEO, CFO, HNIC, in charge. Her mother, Mama Lois Johnson, also born and bred AME, could not understand when Dr. Carruthers joined Trinity United Church of Christ. She had never heard of the United Church of Christ. So she came from Evanston down to the south side of Chicago to see the nature of the cult that had taken her daughter away from the AME church. Mama Johnson came to one service and joined that service. I'm also a charter member of the National African American Reparations Committee, and it is through these three lenses of perception that I offer what I have to offer today. First, let me give you a brief bibliography to help frame the remarks I offer today and to give you some exciting reading from which I draw my facts and my perceptions. I hope you have something to write with or a smartphone to take down with the information I'll give you on your notes section. In honor of John Conyers' long, hard, and futile fight to establish a commission in Congress which would study and develop reparation proposals, I offer you my summary of H.R. 40 and the excellent article written by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Quote, H.R. 40 is not a symbolic act. It is a path to restorative justice. Her article can be found on https://www.aclu.inc. If that's too much to write down or too rapidly given for you to put on your notes in your phone. Let me give you the clip version. Look up www.acluinc.org. You can find it there, or you can just Google the title. H.R. 40 is not a symbolic act. Congresswoman Jackson Lee offers a powerful summary of the battle that extends further back in the past than the 40 years that John Conyers tried to get Congress to pass this resolution. She closes her powerful presentation as follows, and I quote, "Though critics have argued that the idea of reparations is unworkable politically or financially, their focus on money misses the point of H.R. 40 Commission mandate. The goal of these historical investigations is to bring American society to a new reckoning with how our past affects the present condition of African Americans, and to make America a better place by helping the truly disadvantaged. Consequently, the reparations movement does not focus on payments to individuals, but to remedies that can be created in as many forms as necessary to equitably address the many kinds of injuries sustained from chattel slavery and its continuing vestiges. To merely focus on finance is an empty gesture and betrays the lack of understanding of the depth of the unaddressed moral issues that continue to haunt this nation." End quote. I watched Ice Cube. I was telling the students at Howard, the chapel assistants during our time together after service yesterday. I watched Ice Cube and Barbershop 2 last week once again, so I could see once again how the American public is duped by good entertainment, laughter, miseducation, and a conversation about reparations that completely missed the point and led far too many whites and blacks down the wrong path. Congresswoman Lee concludes her investigation by saying, quote, "While it might be convenient to assume that we can address the current divisive racial and political climate in our nation through race-neutral means, experience shows that we have not escaped our history. Though the civil rights movement challenged many of the most racist practices and structures that subjugated the African American community, it was not followed, the civil rights movement was not followed by a commitment to truth and reconciliation. For that reason, the legacy of racial inequality has persisted and left the nation vulnerable to a range of problems that continue to yield the division, racial disparities, and injustice. By passing H.R. 40, Congress can start a movement toward the national reckoning we need to bridge racial divides. Reparations are ultimately about respect and reconciliation, and the hope that one day all Americans can walk together toward a more just future. That's the first thing on my bibliographical suggestions to you. Sheila Jackson Lee's blog, H.R. 40, is not about money. Just a quick footnote. As I've listened to the radio this morning and across the years since Reagan signed into law, the third Monday in January is being Dr. King's Day, I've heard repeatedly speeches, sermons, and clips from King's sermon about equality. And it dawned on me while reading a colleague of mine, Anthony Reddy, R-E-D-D-I-E, he's not on your bibliography, you can look him up, that most of us do not understand the difference between equality and equity. Anthony Reddy is an Afro-British practical black theologian. And in one of his books, he illustrates to his congregation, not a congregation full of university professors, but an ordinary black congregation in Brixton, in London, what the difference is between equity and equality. We keep talking about Dr. King wanting us to have equality. How many of you know the difference? I'll take some. Between equality and equity. Don't everybody raise your hand at once. To show his congregation the difference, he used two devices. One was the game of musical chairs. Now only OGs know what musical chairs is. Our children, the millennials and below, know electronic games. They do not know old-fashioned AME-T games. For those who are under 20, under 25, under 30, musical chairs is simply played by putting 10 chairs out and 11 people walking around those chairs while the music plays. When the music stops, 11 behinds try their best to find their way into 10 seats. The person left standing loses. Then you take one chair away, you now have 10 players with 9 chairs, and so forth and so on until the music stops. Scramble for the seats, take one away, the one standing loses, until you get down to two people with one chair walking round and round and around that one chair until the music stops. And then the scramble to see who can get there behind in a seat. The congregation loved that game. They smiled and laughed and had a good time, not knowing that the pastor had slipped in to the 10 people walking around, 2 professional athletes. So it didn't matter when the music stopped. One of those 2 athletes was going to be the winner from Jump Street. The other thing that most people forget about that game is that the person controlling the music knows when it's going to stop.
No question.
And is watching to see who's behind is closest to the chair when they stop the music. We walking around them chairs thinking we equal.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then he asked for 2 volunteers, male, 2 25-year-old male, Afro-British male, weighing between 120, 130 pounds, in good shape, no cardiovascular distress, no high blood pressure, no diabetes type 2. He got 2 volunteers. Now they're equal, correct? That's equality. Then he put them down at the starter's block and marked off 100 meters and said at the sound of the starter gun, the prize goes to the one who finishes first. Pow! They both took off. One of the African-British runners finished a good 30 yards in front of the other one. It was equal, right. Both same age, same race, same weight, same health conditions, correct? Nobody told his church members that one of the 2 volunteers was a man named Usain Bolt. It looks equal.
It looks equal.
But the only way you can have an equal race with equity is to give the church member a 50-yard head start when you shoot that gun. That's equity. Our kids go to school using the same textbooks that Mrs. Walter used. White kids got smart boards like NCIS and Law and Order SVU. Our kids have never seen a smart board. Equity is providing our children with the same head start that the white kids have when they go into first grade. It's not about equality, it's about equity. Next on my suggested bibliography for you are works that I'm sure those of you from the Howard community have read. They include Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. Mass incarceration is one of the results of the inequities foisted upon African American people, especially African American males. My next book, I recommend to you, is Randall Robinson's The Debt: What America Owes the Blacks. It's crucial in terms of understanding how complex this issue of reparations is and how some thoughtful, intelligent, and coordinated efforts can begin to address in a positive way the issue of reparations. Mary Frances Berry's work is equally important. It is titled, My Face is Black is True, Callie House and the Struggle for Ex-Slave Reparations. Ta-Nehisi Coates, whom I suggested to Dr. Carr ought to be Bethel's presenter today, and he ignored me. Brother Coates' work, The Case for Reparations, found in the Atlantic Monthly, June 2014, describes the work that really began to open up the dialogue and cause it to be seen as a serious discussion and not a silly suggestion. Raymond Winbush up at Morgan State, his book, Should America Pay? Slavery and the Raging Debate on Reparations, is the third book. After Dr. Carruthers, her team of researchers, Samuel DeWitt Proctor, put together the PowerPoint that we're going to rush through. After it was put together by Dr. Carruthers, CEO of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, we discovered, we read, and we were completely blessed by, here's the other book, Sir Hilary Beckles, Beckles. I see most of y'all ain't writing or typing nothing, but his book, Britain's Black Debt. Sir Hilary crunches the numbers and shows you just what one of the European powers did and how much money they made as they engaged in slave trading, human trafficking, and black bodies being bartered on the open market. I was sharing with one of the chapel assistants yesterday. Sir Hilary looks at the tonnage, looks at the captain's log, looks at the ship's manifest to see how many bodies left Britain, left Liverpool, how many arrived in a British colony, what the death rate, what the cost of the different ages, children, women, male people, and translates it into today's prices to show how many billions of dollars just one of the European powers owes European descendants of the European slave trade out of Britain. He accounts meticulously for what Britain by itself owes descendants of Africa. Now you can just imagine what Portugal, the Dutch, the French, the Germans, and the Spanish owe by looking at what his work and doing much of the math, or by simply following the money. Finally, in my short bibliography, I would urge you, as members of the university community and followers of the Bethel Literary and Historical Association, to read Craig Stephen Wilder's book, Ebony and Ivy, Race, Slavery, and the Troubled History of America's Universities. Now, before giving you a quick overview or summarization of the PowerPoint put out by the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference 5 years ago, Let me share one more critical bibliographical footnote. It is not a book that I'm asking you to read. It is a statement by one of the freedom fighters. No, one of the most important freedom fighters in the struggle to end apartheid in South Africa, Brother Steve Biko. Back in 1972, 13 years before the Kairos document was signed, Steve Biko was presenting the plight of the ordinary black South Africans, most of whom lived in townships like Soweto, Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Langa, poor blacks who were not in bed with the apartheid regime, who were not getting favors from the rich white land grabbers. Steve Biko represented the blacks whom John Gwaltney calls dry long-so here in America. In 1972, Biko was pleading the case for the black churches to stop being prisoners of colonization and to stop preaching a gospel of respectability that kept blacks in chains psychologically, economically, geographically, and demographically. Biko argued that the church leaders, including the African Methodist Episcopal Church in South Africa, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church in South Africa in 1972, they needed to stop being Uncle Toms and become a part of the struggle. And in his presentation in 1972, Biko said, quote, "No nation can win a struggle without faith." Would you please say that? No nation can win a struggle without faith. Steve Biko knew, he loved, and he respected church leaders like Chief Albert Lutuli and Dr. Alan Buzak. Before reading any further, let me ask somebody here, who is Chief Albert Lutuli? This is the Bethel Literary and Historical Association.
A lot of people know. You want to answer from that? Yeah, I know what I'm saying. Somebody said it. A little louder so you can hear it, Alvin.
The first African, not Mandela, the first African to win the Nobel Peace Prize, chief of the ANC, African National Congress, and a deacon, D-E-A-C-O-N, in the Groutville Congregational United Church of Christ of South Africa. He wore his chief's hat, the leopard warrior hat, to the ceremony. That's only his daughter had given it to him. That's the only time he wore his hat publicly, his chief's kufi. Biko loved him and Buzak. Of course, Biko respected Bishop Desmond Tutu, but in 1972, Desmond was not a bishop. So Steve locked arms with Lutuli and Buzak to make a differentiation, listen carefully, between faith and religion. Buzak puts it this way: where religiosity is satisfied with form, faith is concerned with substance. Where religion seeks a place of comfort within the world and its rules, structures, and systems, faith seeks to disrupt those systems and structures, challenging those rules and exposing them as rules which favor only the rich and powerful. When war is at its most profitable and religion is at its most complacent, because religion is complicit, faith is most combative in its work for peace. Where religion betrays the poor and is craven before the powerful, faith stands with the poor and seeks to empower the powerless. When religion worships at the altar of greed and prosperity, faith reminds us that we cannot serve God and money. Somebody just missed that. Go back and listen to your T.D. Jakes songs. Go back and listen to your Bishop. What's the Bishop? Paul Morton.
See, there you go.
Prosperity. I wish you prosperity. Jesus said you cannot serve God and money. One TV evangelist who was with the white folk until his wife got cancer said the only reason you're sick is because you don't have faith, word of faith. The only reason you're poor is because you want to be poor. You cannot serve, faith says, Jesus says, God and money. When religion puts on the robe of cowardice and covers up the lie, faith clothes itself in righteousness and stands for truth. When religion embraces political pietism, calculated forgetfulness, and hard-heartedness, and calls that reconciliation, faith calls for repentance that translates into justice, restitution, and the restoration of dignity. In other words, faith calls for reparations, restorative justice. When religion beats the drum of hatred, revilement, and extremism, faith sings a song of justice, love, and freedom. When religion preaches exclusivist dogma, faith rejoices in the inclusive love of God. When religion justifies hypocrisy and bigotry in the name of God, faith, along with the prophet Isaiah, exposes the truth, which is this, quote, "This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." Faith stands with Jesus, as Jesus says, "As I am lifted up, I will draw all unto me." The emphasis is on the word all. No exceptions, no excuses, no ifs, no buts, no however. If that's not standing on the side of reparations for Africans and persons of African descent, I don't know what is. Steve Biko was challenging the church, the black church, to take the faith that it professes and begin to practice it. Biko was talking to black church leaders to get them to challenge the white structures that perpetuated injustice, perpetuated apartheid, perpetuated hatred, bigotry, and racism. Steve Biko was more like a combination of Malcolm X and Martin King than any other South African leader. Now, for the three of you who were taking down notes, let me give you a quick recap of my recommended bibliography. It includes Alexander, Beckles, Berry, Biko, Buzak, Coates, Robinson, Wilder, and Winbush. If you're serious about learning more about this contentious argument of reparations, please look at those authors to see where I'm getting and where we at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor got our bibliography from. Now to the summarized PowerPoint. If you go to the second slide that was up there, it's a quick definition of reparations is a process to remember, to repair, to restore, to rejoin, to replenish, to set right, to make amends, and to reconcile. And always true reparations is a matter of justice. Justice. You've heard it since the 60s, no justice,
no peace.
No peace. Dr. King was the drum major for justice. Without justice, there is no peace. The word reconciliation appears several times in the discussion. Reconcile in this definition before you. Alan Buzak and Curtis DeYoung put this on your list. In my classes, Dr. Carr, I always have my students, and Nakia is one of them, she's here. I say, put this in your books I'm going to read as soon as I finish this degree.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Buzak and DeYoung have a book called Radical Reconciliation, which gets to the root of reconciliation. Root, radical, root, not cosmetic, papering over, painting over, but going to the root. For those of you who like gossip, you'll love their book. It points out how the white power structure tried to paper over the whole apartheid years from 1948 to 1994 with a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And to make it look good, the clerk had Bishop Tutu head the commission. That gives it a sense of respectability. You got South Africa, America, the world's most beloved cleric, heading the commission. Bishop Tutu was not fooled by the chicanery. He knew exactly what they were trying to do. And Buzak and DeYoung write about how he blew their minds by not being duped by the chicanery. He also has a chapter. I always ask my students, like Nakia, what is chapter 7? Try this in your class.
Yes, sir.
When you assign a book, and the students say, how many of you read the book? What is chapter 7 about? They don't know. They read the introduction and the conclusion.
No question.
I always ask my students, what's chapter 7 about? In Radical Reconstruction, Buzak and DeYoung. Chapter 7 is about me. And most of me read it. Look at me right in my face, yes, Reverend, I read it. What is chapter 7 about? Dora. Next slide. Can you see that slide? The printing might be too small. I said we were going to fly through this. That shows you how far back, a partial chart of how far back this whole issue of reparations goes.
These look like the international conferences.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Were you at any of those?
I was at the conference on racism.
In 2001, in Durban?
The reaffirmation, 2011.
Okay.
The United States would not, it boycotted the conference in Durban
That's exactly right.
in 2001.
But Chicago still sent some folk, because Conrad and them went. This was right after 9/11/2001. But Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, they said don't go. And, well, they couldn't go. Say a little bit more.
In 2011, the UN reaffirmed
Yes.
the resolution that they had passed. In that resolution in 2001, the United Nations called slavery a crime against humanity.
Yes.
And to make a whole lot of Zionists mad, they called it the worst Holocaust in the history of humanity.
That's right.
Not only were the United States not a 10, not only were the United States not left, chocolate-covered people like Powell and Condoleezza a 10.
That's right.
In 2011, they boycotted. 10 years later, they still boycotted it.
That's right.
They hate Jimmy Carter because he asks for true reconciliation, not apartheid. He calls what's going on in the state of Israel apartheid.
Yes.
That's a slap in the face to the J Street lobby. Am I in D.C.?
Yes, sir. I think so, brother. The heart of the empire, brother. He's in Mar-a-Lago, though. I'm sure he ain't sitting down there. It's not a work day. You probably scared him off.
To all my friends here from ADOS and all my friends here from CIA, NSA, God bless you. In fact, I got this also from an AME. Teresa Five Brown, the premier homiletician and professor of homiletics. She and I team taught a course, and I noticed every time a student would mess up badly, I mean really badly, she would say with the broadest smile on her face, "Bless your heart."
Yes, sir.
I found out what that means.
That's that Southern honorific. Bless your heart.
Now, so we have time for a dialogue. I don't think Proctor would mind. Those of you who would like a copy of this report on reparations that's in the flash chart.
Yes, sir.
My caregiver, where's Nina? She hates to be recognized. I was trying to remember the word flash drive. If you'd like a copy of this, Nina called it the little red thing. If you'd like a copy of this PowerPoint on the little red thing, please let Reverend Dr. notice I made her a minister. Dana Williams Lamar know, and she will get you a copy free of charge. Free of charge. Hold it. I'm getting ready to quote Richard Pryor. The PowerPoint is free of charge. The little red thing costs $20.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Conversation. So they'll have time to ask questions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's have a round of applause. You want some? Got you, brother. So, yeah, I think we're done with the, Thank you, Rand. No, thank you, brother. Now, let's see if this, let me hold that for you, Bob. Test it. Can they hear you? Can y'all hear?
You can hear you.
Okay, then you want to hold on to it?
You'll turn mine on.
Okay, yes, right.
LB.
There it is.
There it is.
There it is. I'm going to put this next.
Memory.
Go ahead, brother.
Like the corners of my mind.
All right, so let's do it properly then. One more, please. Round of applause for this first section of Reverend Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright, Jr. No question. Appreciate you, Bible. Absolutely. I'll resist the urge to do what the Yoruba would do, which would be lie prostrate and just do like this. With that in mind. So just as a matter of process with this latest in the iteration of Bethel 21, it's 10 minutes to 2. We're going to give over the great balance of this time to conversation. And I mean everybody in this Mbangi, in this collective. I thought maybe we would do a few minutes, and we know we have a hard stop because you got to go back to Chicago. Jacob Carruthers would say, when they get that very un-African weather, but you know. But before we do anything else, though, with your indulgence, Baba, Reverend Lamar, thank you for everybody here at Metropolitan. Absolutely, please.
Find them.
Absolutely. There may be one or two people, this may be your first time in here. If this is, please don't leave without going up in the balcony and looking at that stained glass. Every ancestor in there is so powerful. Think about Martin Luther King's birthday, of course, which was the 15th, but this national holiday, which really is the result of how many people here in Washington, D.C. participated in or over the arc of, since the early 80s, one or more of the D.C. rallies or marches to make Martin King's birthday a national holiday. Absolutely. Thank you. because it was D.C. that pushed the country. And right now they're in Southeast at the Martin Luther King, I think it's the 39th march they had. And some of y'all remember Stevie wanted to come in here for the big rally and the Hotter Than July tour, and Marion Barry ran the city, which meant they had to do what he said. All that came out of this piece. So that's number one. And then number two, to bring it, because those of you who saw the advertisement saw that we had Dr. King and had Dr. Wright. And between them, there was an Adinkra symbol which translates as doing the impossible. And so the demand of reparations anchored in Martin King, Jeremiah Wright, and that genealogy, that art. And I look at that stained glass, Rev, and I think about the fact that Dr. King said every minister in his line came through his mother. And Dr. King's mother's grandfather, Willis Williams, coming out of slavery, his son, Adam Daniel, was in league with that brother right there, who's at about 330 on that, Henry McNeil Turner. And they started Georgia Equal Rights League. And I think it was Bishop Turner that said, God himself not going to come down out of heaven and pass judgment on my manhood. So why would let one of you buckra pass judgment after he had been elected to the Georgia State Legislature under that golden dome in Atlanta? So the AME Church and the Kings go all the way back in that sense. But I want to ask you first about the role of spiritual practice and ministers in this long struggle for reparations, particularly Dr. King, who writes in, and I resisted the urge to bring all those books out. I just brought one. This is Dr. King's first book, written when he was 28 years old, Stride Toward Freedom. In the first chapter, he's talking about taking that pulpit at Dexter Avenue in the shadow of another dome, the oldest dome like that in the South, the Montgomery State Capitol, the cradle of the Confederacy. And Dr. Wright, how much work did Dr. King face, and how much work do we still have to face within thinking of reparations as an internal struggle as we repair ourselves, and then an external demand? How much work did he have to do to get past this class issue in black communities? I'm thinking about the man who he followed into the pulpit at Dexter Avenue, if you catch my drift. See, I'm not a minister, I'm not a lapsed Baptist, but I know this man right here has the whole library in his head, and I hope you catch that drift and just riff, brother, for a minute. And in a minute, we're going to open this up. But how much work did he have to deal with in terms of our own people, particularly in the church, as he's dealing with this question of self-repair and reparations demands?
He had to do a lot of work, and I'm not sure he ever succeeded in that work. Let me mess with Lamar. One of your recently elected bishops, Frank Madison Reed III, and I were classmates, and I used to mess with him all the time. I saw his daddy's picture downstairs on the wall. He worshiped the last time in life at our church when Bishop John Bryan was preaching. And we knelt together for the altar call. He whispered to me, "Please help me get up." He was that sick he couldn't get up off his knees. But I've maintained, and I love that 1816, in my argument, my playful argument with Frank, that they've always been in the United States, and I just saw evidence of it in South Africa, in Cape Town. 2 AME churches. The one in the north and the one in the south.
And there's Morris Brown, right at 12 o'clock noon. Yes, sir.
Now, I think it was Dr. Williams that read the history of Bethel, literary and historical society that went back to 1881. 1881, founded by whom? Say it again. Daniel Alexander Payne. I love him because he provides the key point for my argument with Frank Madison Reed and all of my good AME friends, including Mama Lois Johnson and Ivy Lane Carruthers. Daniel Payne hated black music.
I heard you preach that sermon before.
Because he represented the white strain of the AME Church. Where was the AME Church started? Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when Absalom Jones and Richard Allen were dragged out of St. George's Methodist Church. That was 11 years after 1776. 1776 when the War of Independence was fought. 11 years later, Philadelphia was still very, very British. In the way they talked, they were British. In the liturgy, they were British. And so Absalom Jones went on into another white church. He became the rector of the first first Episcopal Church for Africans.
That's right.
Still Anglican,
Yeah.
still very white. Richard Allen took the Book of Order from the Methodist Church, white, out of England, and became the founding pastor of Mother Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church. Very, very British. The songs were British, the anthems were British, the liturgy was British, the Decalogue was pronounced. Thou shalt have no other gods. Once you got, in fact, Coker stepped back so Allen could get the vote and become the first bishop. You point, don't make me go there.
Got it.
Because another one of those differences, Lamar just, nope, let me don't say we're on tape. Someone just showed me, wanted to remind me as if I didn't know, I've been fighting it all my life, is the color issue.
Watch out now. Come on now.
You say class. I'm like, what's his name? Sinbad.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sinbad said, well, look at me going back to Africa. He said, what tribe are you from? He said, the High Yellows.
Call it what it is.
But in addition to the color issue, Dr. Carr,
Yes, sir.
those slave ditties, he hated. In fact, what has become my mantra in studying black sacred music, he said to a presiding elder in Charleston, South Carolina, because once you get south of Maryland, Virginia, and get into North Carolina and South Carolina, and the Low Country, Georgetown, South Carolina, go down there and listen to the music. It sounds just like Johannesburg, AMH, with the beat and the ring shout. He said to the presiding elder, Payne did, we got to stamp out this fist and heel music. And the presiding elder said back to the bishop, memorize this if you don't remember nothing else from today. Without the beat, the spirit don't come.
That's right.
Now that pure African understanding of sacred music and with the spirit don't come, when you talk about the importance of spirit.
Yes, sir.
Do you know the name of the pastor at Dexter Avenue, by the way?
Of course, his niece was led to walk out in Virginia, the great Vernon Johns.
My cousin.
No question, really.
My blood cousin.
All you Virginian,
Crazy Negro.
no question. Please say a little bit more, because is it true they ran him out of that pulpit?
Oh God, yes. Now, his daughter,
We haven't left reparations, by the way. This is really a reparations conversation.
the daughter that's in California jail for Smith Church,
Yes, sir.
I started asking her because I'd heard this rumor and I wanted to know if it was apocryphal or true. She stopped me mid-story. She said it was true. I was sitting there. He had a member of his congregation whose son died. No, whose son was murdered. He was a gangster. Never darkened the doors of the church. Got killed in a crap game for cheating. And the family wanted to have the funeral at his church. He said the man didn't walk down the aisle while he was alive. Why you want to roll him down the aisle now? He can't do nothing about it. They went to the Board of Trustees. Heavy contributors. They said, if you don't let us have this service at your church, we're not only taking our membership somewhere else, we're taking our money. The trustees ordered him to have the funeral. And she stopped me right there and told the rest of the story. They proceeded with scripture, had to call to worship, opening hymn, scripture reading, the lessons for the service, Old Testament, New Testament, asked for resolutions, another hymn, silent reading of the obituary. He stood up to do the eulogy, and he said, Gregory Carr was a bad Negro. Everybody said, amen, amen. He said, last Friday night, he met a Negro that was better than he was. Come on, Jacob, let's go to the cemetery.
There it is, amen.
He also had a funeral. You say how long the eulogy had to be.
Right.
That kind of radical.
And Johns believed in, and think about this in terms of reparations in this context, and then we're going to come back to South Carolina. Johns, let's grow our own food, let's sell our own stuff, let's set up our own establishment, our own business, our own work. Coming very much out of a reparations tradition. Yesterday you preached a little bit toward the end about Bishop Kenny and about living off the land. And when you mentioned the first reparations movement we see in this country, of course, is right during the Civil War in South Carolina and in Mississippi, when the Union uses Africans against the Confederacy by giving them the land they had been working on. Of course, they betrayed them. In South Carolina, I think they sent General Howard out to tell them that they couldn't keep the land. But it's that notion that while we're making a demand of other people, we should be repairing ourselves. And it seemed like that upset Dexter Avenue in a way.
Got to. In fact, that little red thing y'all can buy for free has a slide on self-repair.
Yes, sir.
Spiritual. Because we've been damaged. And many of us don't even know the depth of that damage.
Say some more about that. You said something yesterday about the difference between bondage and enslavement.
Right. The Association of Black Psychologists 25, 30 years ago said, in order to be a slave, you have to give psychological assent to the enslaver. Harriet Tubman, Amy Zion, itinerant elder, Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, Negroes who refused to live by the rules established for them by the dominant class never gave psychological assent. They said, do you know what a slave secular is? I don't everybody raise your hand. Slave secular. You can find about 10 of them in the Book of Negro Folklore, edited by Sterling Brown, Arnaud Thomas, Langston Hughes. In addition to the spirituals, Africans enslaved in this country were just like us. All of them didn't go to church.
Yes, sir.
And they made fun of the church. In addition to the sacred songs that came out, spirituals, there were some non-sacred songs they created, like they were called slave secular. I can teach you one very easily. All you have to do is sing Hallowed Be Thy Name. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Hallowed be thy name. He's a secular. They'd hear the Christians singing it and they start singing theirs. Our Father, which art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name.
The white man owe me 11, but he only paid me 7.
Hallowed be thy name. That was the loudest Hollywood did. Slave secular.
Secular. Thy
Yes, sir.
kingdom come, thy will be done.
Hallowed be thy name.
If I hadn't took that, I wouldn't have got none.
Hallowed be thy name.
There was always that part of our community that made fun of the white man's religion.
Yes.
Because like the Ethiopians, they knew that is not the Jesus we knew.
How about that?
That's not the spirit that we know. White worship, this is not derogatory, it is descriptive. White worship is, in the words of Dr. John Kennedy, anti-Semitic body negating. You stand still, you cover your body with robes and John Knox caps. Still do it in the AME Church in Johannesburg. If you want to show emotion, you show it by using your elbows. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. See, y'all, a body affirming, because the body is not dirty to Africans. And y'all coming with the fist and heel music. Titty slapping. Because that's simply what God gave you to feed the baby. That's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
And Negroes who bought into somebody else defining them couldn't understand that because it reminded them of Africa. Do you know that immediately following slavery, several black churches, African and Methodist Episcopal included, forbid the singing of spirituals in song in worship? Because it was a throwback to slavery, and we're beyond that. We listen. We can speak as you speak. We can sing as you sing. We can worship just like you. 1 hour from call to worship to benediction. You get 8 minutes more on Communion Sunday. Because we were trying desperately to be accepted. Some of us still are.
No question.
And that's a part of the fight that we had in repair. We don't even know we need repairing.
That's right.
We still say stuff. You say your mother, your grandmother would slap you downstairs.
No question. If I said something about Obama. Yeah, that's all right.
My mother back in the 70s, 60s, I had a beautiful natural, y'all. I got some pictures of me. Nina, what you say I look like?
Did she say Freddie Krueger? Who, Nina? Who did you say? Freddie Krueger. I thought that's what you said.
My natural.
I used to say Fred Williamson. Somebody would have.
Shella Bear, my big natural.
No question.
My mother said to me, now she's from Surrey County, Virginia. Well, why you mess your hair up like that? You got good hair.
Slavery.
60s.
Yes, sir.
Now, before you laugh at my mama, right now, I mentioned yesterday I got 2 new granddaughters. Yep. When our babies are born, we check behind the ear, we check the fingernails.
No question.
Because you always marry up. Meaning hierarchical, get close to white as you can. That's a lot of self-repair that needs to be done because we hate ourselves.
Absolutely. So let's hit the clap in there. And Dr. No, in a minute, we're going to get folks, I don't already have them to start writing down questions and comments. Oh, you have them, good. So we'll move to that. I want to build a little bit of a bridge there because you've established that and that class tension, that internal repair. Thinking about a speech, Dr. No, not a speech. No, go ahead. You get your finger up.
Just one thing.
No, make that
I did not come back to when you said spirit. White folks are afraid of the Holy Spirit.
No question about it.
And see, when black folks start screaming, shouting, falling out, which are African practices.
Yes, sir.
Going in and just slaying in the spirit.
Yes.
That's scary to us who have been educated.
Right. That's it. And that's where I really one of the last public comments Dr. King gave, as you know. This was late October, 1967. So he's come out against the Vietnam War that April, and as we heard you say, Reverend Lamar, he's wildly unpopular. But he's in South Carolina, he's in Charleston, South Carolina, when he talks about what it would mean really to repair. I'm talking about the external demand now. And he says, among other things, that he gives kind of an example like you gave. You can't, he said, it's like letting somebody out of prison and then telling them they don't have a place to stay, you didn't give them bus fare back. You can't, and he lays out the whole case really for reparations. Dr. King gives this speech, October, I think the 30th, 1967. And as you're talking, reminds me in that same speech, he says, I'm not interested in the first Negro to do something. I want to know about the second, the third, the fourth, because it's in this worldview where he says, you know, black achievement as individuals isn't what we ever were. And it begins here. So how much of our reparations demand, and you've laid it out, like say in the PowerPoint, Dr. Carruthers, Mama Iva has done it, but you working with NARC, the African American Reparations Coalition, Institute of the Black World, and COBRA, all the organizations, how much of what we're seeing today in 2020 it still needs to be informed by the logic that we are making a demand for all of us and with all of us, rather than one here, one there, one another there. And Dr. King, near the end of his life, grounds it in a collective work in a state, as you said, that really represents that kind of spiritual practice all the way back. I mean, can we have reparations one by one?
No.
So then what are these people talking about then when they talk about let's give people checks, individual checks, for example? I mean, how much of how we think must inform our demands in that? It's not about individual compensation.
No, and as I was telling one of the students' chapel assistants yesterday, when you look at one or two of the works that I cited bibliographically, I will never see, nor will you, nor anyone in our generation, the benefits of what we're asking this nation to do. Our grandchildren and great-grandchildren are what we're arguing for as a people.
Yes.
Not whether they came from Haiti, Jamaica, or Georgia, but anybody black that got to this side of the Atlantic because of the slave trade. Grants for free health care, money for education, free college, free graduate school, for my two granddaughters who were just born, for their kids.
That's right.
I ain't gonna see nothing, not a penny. But because we see what we did for the Jewish community after the Holocaust, for the Japanese after their internment.
Come on, brother. That's
we
right.
start thinking about money. We start translating that into money. It's not about money for us. It's about repairing the damage you did because it created inequities in wealth,
Right.
inequities in health care. How do you repair that? Not with a Band-Aid.
No.
And dollars of Band-Aids. But how do you do the spirit? One last footnote on spirit before we get to what you're getting ready to ask. To bolster or buttress what I said about the presiding elder telling Bishop Payne, have you ever read, not you, Lamar, have you read it when you were little, my mommy made you read it. Second Kings, 3rd chapter, when Jehoshaphat wants to know, should they go to battle? He's got some allies trying to talk him into fighting. And he wants to know, should we get, isn't there a prophet here? All the king's prophets say, yeah, go on and fight. He said, no, there's got to be a real prophet. They're saying what the king wants me to say. These prophets, he said slowly, these prophets are saying what the king wants me to say. Their allegiance is to the government,
How about that,
not
brother?
to God.
How about that?
Isn't there another prophet somewhere? They said, well, yeah, Elisha's here. Go get Elisha. They got Elisha. And they asked him the question, should we go to war? And he said, I didn't know you were going to be here. Because I can't stand you or your mama. And he says that. But because he's asking, okay, I will prophesy. Remember the passage? The next words out of his mouth, get me a musician. And when the music starts to play is when the Spirit comes on him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If we get scared of people speaking in languages we don't understand, we get scared of people doing dances we don't understand, we never learn. But those are spiritual necessities that are found biblically in our faith story. Now y'all ain't got no problems doing the stanky leg.
Same beat, brother. Is that a slave secular?
But get upset with somebody who's doing a holy dance. But spirit is a non sequitur. You can't have the Spirit. Now you can commune, meditate, silence, and all that. But in terms of corporate communal worship,
Yes.
it's as natural as breathing. That's what the ring shout after the service is over.
No question.
The ring shout, counterclockwise, still goes on in the Low Country. I asked one of the students yesterday, did he know what the Low Country was? Had he ever been to the Low Country? He said, you mean Atlanta? I said,
Now, let me, what the process is, we're going to get these questions. Let's open it up some here because one thing about the Bethel Literary Society, as you all well know, some folks may not know, that this was like a metronome. Talk about a rhythm. This convening, which stretches back over a century, and this is just the latest in this rebirth iteration, really convenes us together, and we should be feeling that spiritual kind of thing. So, I mean, these folks are here to hear, and not only but to hear, but to be in dialogue. So I'm going to resist the urge to follow that last comment up with a question, and let's get some folks. I think I see Dr. Gordine. Oh, y'all looking through them? While y'all are sorting, then just let me know when you're ready. Very quickly. Dr. King, as we heard again, we heard Reverend Moore said, wildly unpopular that last year, comes out against the war of Vietnam. After he is killed, I think is it 2 years later, James Foreman busts up with the Black Manifesto in the same church, Riverside Church.
that's on the little red thing.
Ah, excellent. So we'll all have it for $20. But what in 2020, and of course, and you know, if Dr. King were here, well, he is here in the spiritual sense, the way you've been treated is very consistent with the way he was treated at the end, right? Including by those in power, regardless of color.
Yes, sir.
What is the demand now? What is the demand upon our institutions? Not just the black church, not just black colleges, but the place where the vast majority of our people live, which is beyond those walls. What is the demand on us now in terms of making the reparations demand? In the spirit of a Dr. King saying, I'm not a politician. I have to make this demand. This is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, and I have to stand against it. What is our demand now? In fact, to use the topic of your sermon yesterday, what do you see, Jeremiah?
I see our demand now the same as it was when he was alive, when nobody would listen to him. And I see the young people, as I said yesterday, the generation that has given up on the church, but hasn't given up on God.
Yeah.
I see them carrying that demand forward. I was trying to remember another quote of his, just as powerful as the one you read about the number one purveyor of violence. Taken to the next step, you look at his quote on militarism.
Yes, the triple evils, militarism, materialism, and racism.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Now, militarism, this is one of the, oh no, excuse me, not one of, this is the military capital of the world.
No question.
You know, we ain't got no problem raising the military budget every year and debating over whether or not we're going to hear Conyers' proposal to study the impact of chattel slavery upon the continent of Africa and all of its descendants. Because the military runs, what happened on the second day of the year? We murdered Qasim Soleimani.
Yeah, another presidential hit. There hasn't been a president sitting in the modern era that hasn't. In fact, Trump's got a lot more killing to do to catch up with Obama, but that's a story maybe for another day. Yeah, they both had kill lists, but absolutely, yeah.
Here's a statement that would make your mother slap me. I already said it. You seen these T-shirts with King on one side and Barry on the other side?
Yes, sir.
Fulfillment of the dream.
Right.
No, King said, I have a dream. Barry said, I have a drone.
Many drones. Many drones. In fact, let me close with, and again, the reason I brought Strive Toward Freedom is because King didn't make it to 40, as we know, but this was written when he was in his 20s. And there are 12 chapters in this book. The last chapter is entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? So the book that was published after he was killed, the title for it is in the first book he published, In the Wake of the Montgomery Bus Boycott. But the last line in this book, he says, today the choice is no longer between violence and nonviolence, as we know, famous dicta. It is between nonviolence and non-existence. That's right, Red. But he writes this at 28. He says, the Negro may be God's appeal to this age, an age drifting rapidly to its doom. So this isn't King after Selma. This isn't King after Birmingham. This is King before any of those things. He says the eternal appeal takes the form of a warning. All who take the sword will perish by the sword. Now he's writing that in his 20s, so people, now of course we've frozen him in, as you said, Doc, we've frozen him on the Washington Monument, begging to be an American, as if that's what he was asking for. But when you anchor this in the spiritual, you've transcended the political. But everything has to be informed by the spiritual. That bridge that you have walked and continue to walk, that Dr. King walked, that he inherited from his people, from our people. It isn't just for black people, but reparations is really, the trial is America's own trial. And he did say that, right? He said, what is that last piece they found those notes? America may go to hell. So let's ask about reparations and porn. There it is. The first one, reparations and politics. Is that right? Politically, and you've been involved in a lot of this work. And we were all together in 2015 when we started the National African American Reparations Coalition in New York. I think that was Paul Robeson's brother's church, wasn't it? Ben Robeson, AME Zion. Yeah, Benjamin Robeson.
Same night as Dr. Ben's funeral.
Dr. Ben's funeral, that's right. We left Abyssinian Baptist Church and went over to the AME Zion Church, Big Bethel. That was one of the few places Paul Robeson could sing in public because all the respectable Negroes turned their back on him. Robeson, another reparations guy. He and William and Louise Patterson, 1951, they go to the UN and say we charge genocide, all that tradition. So in this moment, politically, what kind of things do you imagine, based on your long struggle in this movement, should we be doing politically? How should we be interacting with the political process around reparations? We got a presidential election coming up for us.
Running the risk of imitating Sisyphus. I believe we should be asking, it probably will not come from the church at all, but from the Black Lives Matter movement and that generation, seeing where and possibly trying to force politicians to take this issue seriously. Now what was her name, Williamson?
Oh yeah, Marianne Williamson, the candidate.
Yes, she came out and said she supported it.
Yeah, in this city, among other places. Yeah.
Forgetting other politicians, Biden was strangely silent.
Or consistent. What about Sanders and Warren when they started talking about a wealth tax? One of the reparations conversations that we've had in terms of land, Dr. King talks about this too. In fact, he gives a long sermon where he talks about how black people were denied the land. And he says the land is then given to the white immigrants from Europe. They giving them all these millions of acres that they took from Native Americans, and then turn around and create land grant colleges so they can learn how to farm, and then turn around and tell black people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But we read a book with freshman seminar this fall called Repair, where Catherine Franke says there should be a tax on the wealth transfer. And in reading that, the young people say, well, that sounds like what Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are talking about. But that would benefit everyone. So reparations isn't about just us, right? I mean, so if there's a wealth tax in terms of the wealth transfer, trillions of dollars over the next couple of decades, and that was turned into, there's no such thing as free anything. We pay taxes. So subsidized education, subsidized health care, is that the kind of thing we should be scrutinizing these presidential candidates?
I think so. I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that I haven't read completely, but one of the things I keep wondering about and waiting to see is in this whole Ardos argument.
Oh, yeah.
And them attacking Roland Martin because he's of Haitian descent. How is it that Haiti beat the French?
Now speak on that.
And Haiti is still paying reparations to the French.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, you answered that earlier. They were in that ring shout, right? Talking about their boys came on ceremony. What did Boukman say? Cast down the image of the white man's God who has brought down your tears for so long and speak to liberty. That was in a spiritual ritual, by the way. That's the Haitian ritual. I ain't ready for that name. All right, so in fact, but let's talk about that, because this American descendants of slavery does cut us off from the reparations struggle that we've seen in this country. And since you did participate and continue to participate in these international, you mentioned Sir Hilary Beckles. Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he speak from right here? That's right. So people watched C-SPAN and saw Ta-Nehisi them down there at the Capitol. But what you didn't see sitting in there who got to speak, he didn't get to speak, was Sir Hilary Beckles, who spoke right here with your friend Ron Daniels, everybody else here. This next question somebody asked this: what role do you see Africa playing, the African reparations movement, in this process, and should the African Union be engaged? Lord have mercy. Because I can imagine what he's about to say.
I think Africa should be engaged.
Yeah.
But just like approaching the subject of reparations, be clear which country or which nation you're talking about of the 54 countries.
Yes, sir. So you wouldn't see it as a collective. Would it be a... So was it Mashoud Abiola that hosted the reparations summit in 92 or 94? I guess Abba would know. But they called everybody to Nigeria in Abuja. They were in Abuja. I'm sure that's on the red thing. Yeah, yes, absolutely. And there was a conversation, but you thinking it would be better to do nation to nation to...
I was saying in your own investigation, when we say Africa,
yes,
we know who we're talking about.
Got it. I see.
I felt conflicted, for instance. I know more about the African Union of Churches than the AU. I went to the last, they only meet every 10 years, to the African Union of Churches. Mm-hmm. They were very excited in that for the first time since they had an African Union of Churches, the Pentecostals sat at the table as equals. Prior to that meeting, Pentecostals said we have nothing to do with politics.
There it is.
But this last time they were there, they were excited They mean the African countries were Episcopal, AME's Anglican. They were all excited that the Pentecostals came to the table, not to fight, but to talk, to dialogue, to be in a conversation, and look at things in terms of how do we go forward. I said I was conflicted. Why? Because Bishop Tutu would not come.
Anglican.
He's Anglican. But the meeting was held in Uganda.
Oh, so he has a political conflict.
Uganda's position on sexuality.
Yeah.
Tutu said it would be hypocritical of me to know where I stand on this issue and go into a country that is rabidly homophobic.
So how do you square that with prophetic witness? Isn't that where you're supposed to go?
I did ask him. Yeah, I'll give you his email address.
Then I took students to that church he preached in. Like you said, you talked about them little things where you got to go down there and contemplate your worthlessness. Now, I know that tradition he was trained in. It's probably too late. Let's ask, should the Electoral College vote be included with demands for reparations? Meaning, should the abolishment of the Electoral College be included? Since it was devised in a formula that involved enslaved people, should it be abolished since chattel slavery is supposed to be over? I think it's inappropriate. If slavery is really over, shouldn't that Electoral College end as we stand poised on perhaps the next? What do you think? Should that be included in reparations demand?
It should be. I think it should be a part of the reparations demand, unless we're able to get rid of it before that.
Wow, what would that look like? It's interesting. Okay, let's continue. Oh, by the way, they passed the Equal Rights Amendment in Richmond, last week, I guess. And everybody with their guns is down there right now. So those of you monitoring the situation, send prayers and get ready to ball your fists up just in case. I think, is Richmond where, what's the guy that preached The Sun Do Move? John Jasper. Is that what John Jasper is written? They talk about somebody drove Bishop Payne crazy.
6 Mount Zion.
Really?
That's the name of the church.
Yeah, my goodness. So, given Donald Trump's full-throated support for white supremacy, I got you.
I guess sticking with Electoral College.
Yes, sir.
And the first question about politics, I'm uneasy for 2 reasons. Two reasons I would mention. One has to do with the way politics operates. And here's what I mean. Be honest, show of hands, how many of you know what the negotiated settlement in South Africa was? Negotiated settlement?
You may have heard it called that, but yes. Get some hands up.
The average South African, white and black, did not know what the negotiated settlement was until the 2000s. It was negotiated before 1994. Those long lines of Africans you still saw standing in line to vote had no idea what had been settled by politicians.
Yes, sir.
Before they got to the polls. Before they got to the polls. And Madiba was a part of it.
Oh, no question.
The white power structure sat down with the ANC leaders and negotiated this settlement. Do you want Mandela out of prison? Sign here. Do you want apartheid to end? Sign here. Now, before you sign, read. First of all, we're going to make this whole front row millionaires.
Cyril Ramaphosa, the current president.
At least going to get $1 million cash, tax-free. Secondly, you must agree no violence.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, you got to keep the violence down. Number 2, white folk get to keep all the money, the banks, the military, and the land.
Yes, sir.
which is why black South Africans love Mugabe. Mugabe said, no, y'all stole the land, we taking it back.
Yeah.
Make Zimbabwe great again. Take back the land you stole from us. They had to agree to give up the land, the gold, the military, the banks, the currency. If you want Mandela out, you're all busy dancing the toy, thinking it's a wonderful win. Yeah, because of the negotiated settlement. That's the only way he's gonna get out, the only way apartheid will end. And the folk voting had no idea that it happened. People in the United Democratic Front did not know that it happened.
And that's Alan Bozak in there.
Right. So that distrust for politicians is what scares me in terms of, the other reason is a historian of religions. My second reason for being uneasy about politics. My primary mentor in the history of religions was Dr. Charles Long. And Dr. Long put this question to us. Had you ever noticed how many political parties there are in South Africa or in England? Just use those two countries, because a part of the negotiated settlement was, however the vote goes, these many seats will be guaranteed in Congress for the white racist Clerk Party.
That's right.
Guaranteed. Ad infinitum until Jesus comes. Y'all can have 20 million blacks as opposed to 2 million whites, but these seats in your Congress are guaranteed for white folk. Well, you got the Labor Party, you got the Union Party, you got the Liberals, you got all the different parties to get certain seats in the ruling houses politically. Have you ever noticed that? Anybody besides those of us in Chuck's class that he pointed at, have you ever noticed how many parties they got? In England, UK, South Africa? Chuck said there are only 2 parties in the United States of America. One of them on the left, one on the right. And you ain't in neither one of them. Don't neither one of them give a damn about y'all.
That's right, brother.
Which is why politics makes this.
So very quickly, given Donald Trump's full authority to support for white supremacy and Putin's cyber support for Trump, what do we need to do to defeat Trump in 2020? Realizing politics is just one step in this process.
Politically, we need to double or triple the popular vote. We already won the popular vote the last election.
That's right.
But we need twice that many in numbers. Now,
Gotta vote.
I'll quote another theologian to answer that question in a different way.
Yes, sir.
The other theologian is named Professor Dave Chappelle.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Who said Trump has been able to do in this divided country, divided from its inception, exacerbated in the 1800s over the issue of slavery, further divided under Trump. But he's been able to do what no other politician, especially president, has been able to do. He has brought together Republicans, Democrats, Independent, Green Party, all of whom hate his guts.
It's true.
And build on that. There are many Republicans who have jumped ship and will continue to jump ship the crazier he gets. So build on that strength.
Coalition. the ancestors don't make any mistakes. This is definitely in divine order, because the next question actually speaks about one of those people who ostensibly politically jumped ship, so to speak, Michael Bloomberg. Yesterday he was in Tulsa. I realize that. Those of you watching Watchmen know that Regina King got it right, went back to the original concept of God. But at any rate, Michael Bloomberg was in Tulsa, the site of the Black Wall Street. In his speech, he proposed new economic policies designed to help black voters and money for reparations. What are your thoughts? And there's a couple of books on here, Price of Racial Reconciliation and Conflict of Mind, 2 books that are added to the bibliography. But what are your thoughts? What's Bloomberg's angle? He's not giving up his billions. He gave $500 million to Johns Hopkins about 15 minutes ago. What are your thoughts on cash for reparations as somebody like Bloomberg?
I think any offer of cash for reparations starts from the wrong premise. After I give that, now I'm done.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just like when we passed the Civil Rights Bill, the Voting Rights Bill, we've solved the race problem. We're in a post-racial America.
That's right. That's right.
Charlottesville was just a little blip on the radar screen. That, put it in church language, I know you still remember church language. There's a difference between mission, benevolence, and ministry.
Mission, benevolence, and ministry.
It's easier when Lamar stands up Sunday and talks about the latest storm of nature, either in Haiti or in Joburg, for the members in worship to come out of their pocket one time. That's mission, the missionary offering.
Yes, sir.
Benevolence, we threw at that.
Yes, sir.
For him to stand up and say, I need 6 students from Howard, 6 students from Georgetown, 6 students from American to commit to 2 years in Joburg. I don't see no volunteers.
Well, I think at Howard we've got it down to a week. I mean, alternative spring break.
Spring break.
The gesture
But you're
of
talking about
service.
living there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir. Or for that matter, Southeast.
Anacostia.
No question.
And once I give out of my pocket, I feel like that's it.
And take a selfie so you can post it on social media now.
Your mama in the casket. They do that here. Just me and grandma.
Yeah.
Smile, grandma.
Yeah.
She did, man. So I distrust any offer of money, because that's going to be the end of this discussion.
Got it. Thank you. All right, I'm mindful of the clock. I'm going to keep going. Thank you, Bob. There are records, financial records, of the transference, captivities, sale of kidnapped Africans on all continents. Proceeds have resulted in generational wealth from this theft. What about targeting these, moving from the political to the financial, targeting these corporations? And correct me if I'm wrong, NARC's position and COBRA's position is that there's not only a demand of the government, there's also a demand of corporations. Say a little bit more about that, Peter.
Well, residents of DMV have heard about or know about Georgetown. But targeting corporations, which include universities and colleges. And some have begun to respond positively to that.
Absolutely.
I was
Princeton
asked,
Theological it did.
yes, I was talking to the executive minister here. Lamar, what's your executive minister name? Harris?
Yes, Moya Harris.
I was talking to Moya downstairs about Lincoln University. Lincoln University was started by white Presbyterians
Yes, sir.
who were reacting to the racism of Princeton, not letting any black people in the seminary. So they started Princeton, those white alumni and trustees started Lincoln University for males going into ministry.
Yes, sir.
And I was telling her I didn't know it had gone co-educational until I went there in the 80s and saw all these beautiful black women with robes across their arms. I said, this many brothers can't have this many sisters with robes, but they had the tassels. I said, the girls go here, and they laughed at me because I was so out of touch. That's what you get being an OG. The valedictorian and the salutatorian were Nigerian women.
Not unusual, brother. Yes, sir. I can see that.
But Princeton's one of the schools. Is anybody here familiar with what Evanston has done? I was telling you. There he goes, he got that one. Evanston, Illinois,
Yes.
where Northwestern University is.
Yes.
A freshman, first term, black city council woman introduced a bill, got it passed, and is now in a force, taking what would have been tax of all the reefer money from the first until Jesus comes,
Right.
using that as reparations.
Yes.
In the first week, it was over $300 million. Puff, puff, pass.
That's right. Now, mind you, don't forget, though, as we know, Baba, that I think there are 15 licenses that were given in Illinois, not one to anybody black.
No.
So a lot of this is black people taxing themselves, even as these companies enrich themselves, these proprietors. But we shouldn't go any further, as you marked and mentioned Evanston, without acknowledging that Chicago, leading Illinois, the Illinois statewide slave trade commission, coming out of, driven by Chicago. And of course, Chicago coming out of that work, actually going back before that, I guess it would be Gary, 72, there was a reparation conversation. The first presidential platform, correct me if I'm wrong, was Jesse Jackson, I think, in 84 and 88, which of course ties, I see Sister Walters there, your husband Ron Walters, the intellectual architect of a lot of that. So reparations has been a presidential level conversation, but it was driven by Illinois. What is it about Chicago in particular that allowed you all to kind of be a grounding force for combining the political, the spiritual, and cultural, and getting real results like what we see in Evanston?
How many of you listened to, I think it was West, WHUR talk show last week or week before last? In 2 segments he had Raymond Winbush and Leonard Jeffries on the first part. Then he had Tony Browder and Carolyn Wright. The question came up about Chicago and Tony Browder. Anthony Browder said, did you all hear his response? He said there's something about Chicago and something about Chicago Negroes. They're crazy.
Well, he's from Chicago.
Right. He said, you don't mess with
Tony is from Chicago.
You don't want to mess with us.
No question. Well, you saying us like you're from Chicago. You brought that from the East Coast. That's a Philadelphia Negro conversation.
But I would go back as far as Harold Washington.
Yes. Absolutely. Y'all, please. Definitely.
When Harold showed us how to bring together people who don't even speak to each other normally.
There it is.
To work together on a common agenda.
Yes.
And the Hispanics who disappointed us at first until we heard what they were saying. Hispanics jumped ship and were supporting something the black community was having a problem with. And all the persons from the Hispanic ward said, we have no permanent friends. We have no permanent enemies. We don't even have permanent allies. We have permanent issues.
Yeah.
Now, if you right on this issue, we with you. You're wrong on the next issue. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, Felicia.
That's an original CBC, Bill Lacey and Cats. Let's go to education very quickly. I'm gonna cluster these with a mindful of the clock. There are questions about HBCUs, historically black colleges. Is there a role for HBCUs, Morehouse, Virginia Union, Tennessee State, Howard, in this struggle for reparations, in your mind?
That's one of the reasons I gave a bibliography, hoping that Howard students would read.
Yes, sir.
One of your students from the course, Repair,
Yes.
was talking to me yesterday.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I asked her about Wilder. I asked her about Ta-Nehisi Coates. She had not read those. You didn't make that required reading.
We only get to pick one a year, brother. We're doing the best we can. We get them 1,200 at a time, but it is a losing battle. I shouldn't say that. It's not a losing battle. It's a shifting battle. You made that point earlier. We're moving against moving image literacy, the internet, social media, and so duly noted. I'm gonna go back and work a little harder next week.
That is not an indictment against you.
No, it should be.
I'm saying against the university to make sure our students are knowledgeable about the arguments and read even contradicting arguments
Absolutely.
so that they're well versed and not acting on barbershop.
You know, did you speak on follow up with education? Everything you've said today, in the arc of what you've worked your whole life, speaks to collective work. Because even as you said, I'm thinking to myself, what else could I do differently? And you realize it's not really me. It's institutions that have to do this work so that none of us are outliers, right? So you, having come through strong institutions, having worked to continue and continue to extend strong institutions, how do we help? And I'm thinking again about Dr. King. I think it was Dr. King. Was it Dr. King? It was Dr. King who said, how do we get rid of self-centeredness? And he says, one of the ways we get rid of self-centeredness is realize that anything we've done or are doing is the result of somebody else's sacrifice, somebody else's work. How do we get ourselves into that position where we understand that our work can't be achieved except through working together? Everything you've said is kind of leading us to this moment. And there are a couple of questions in here, by the way, that speak to that general theme. I wanted to say that. This one.
I'm trying not to go straight to South Africa, but I am going there.
Yes, sir.
Let me start with the conversation I overheard at dinner with students. The African understanding, and I would go back to understanding in terms of self-repair,
Yes, sir.
that we are an African people living in diaspora.
Yes.
Now, what King said, the second, third, fourth generation assimilation has messed a whole lot of, and caused a whole lot of damage. But starting with the fact that you are an African person living in diaspora. All right.
Yes.
The African understanding of personality formation and the European understanding of personality formation are like night and day.
Take your time.
Europeans define themselves using the language that you use, a king, self-something, self-centered.
Self-centeredness, yeah, the self.
That's how Europeans describe personality formation, starting with cogito ergo sum.
Yeah, I think.
Descartes, I am, I think, therefore I am. It's about I and me. Followed by Camus, I rebel, therefore I am. Focus on me, self. Translated into Hollywood, I did it my way.
How about that? Pause, let me pause just a second about, because to make sure, because we won't have time for this, but that self, we have control of the individual self. That becomes the first property interest, if you look at the European legal universe. And then extending that self to other objects becomes the centerpiece of the legal universe. That's what we call property, real and personal property, which is why 3/5 means I can diminish your humanity because I'm the only human being. When we talk about reparations, we often talk about it in terms of material interest in part because of that Western worldview. I want that. Why, who told you you were in charge? The ball was getting ready to burn up. Environmentally, no. But you're at the core of that worldview is a sense that somehow you're not connected to anything. Except what you can take from somebody else.
I did it my way.
Yes, sir.
Don't the alphas have to learn something like Invictus?
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit. We ain't gonna go into that Greek letter stuff now. You go start.
But isn't that written by a European?
Of course.
Who talks about I, me.
No question. I am the master of my fate.
Of my soul.
Wait, somebody else had to learn it too. Didn't y'all have to learn that in that?
No.
You didn't?
No.
You're the outlier. I'm sure there's a lot of Greek letter Negroes that know Invictus. In fact, oh no. And isn't that the name of the movie they made based on the book on Mandela and them went into the South? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to get ahead of you. I think we're on the same vibe now. Go ahead, brother.
Now, getting Africa, I think the question was how do we do that?
Yes.
Getting Africans to look. I start in Africa. Many of us do not have to go back as far as Africa. We can do it 2 or 3 generations.
That's right.
Africans define the personality by virtue of the community that produced you. Community.
No question about it. Yes, sir.
Some of us can't remember. Anybody here old enough to remember dating, D-A-T-I-N-G? Well, young people, younger than Jerry, you in your 50s, that ain't young.
You know you're going to get it.
Let me talk to these young people right here.
Yes, sir.
If you were to date her, today you follow Beyonce rules. You pull up to the front of the house, blow the horn. She comes out, shaking it left, shaking it. In our day, you had to get out the car.
Oh, no question.
Go up on the porch, ring the bell, take off your do-rag, go in, sit down, and talk to the mother and father, or mother or father, because they want to know who you are and who your peeps.
Who are your people?
Do they go to Metropolitan? Your father on the Deacon board? You got any crazy people in your family?
Right.
Because you are defined by the community that produced you. I had recently, I shouldn't say 2000, show you I'm getting older, 2009, I was in Norfolk, Virginia at the Bank Street Baptist Church where my uncle used to pastor, Sam Proctor's church.
My goodness.
They were without a pastor at the time. Dr. Griffin had died. They were taking the offering, and things got quiet. The organist playing softly. I said, it looked like they finished the offering to me. I looked at the bulletin, what's next? This old lady was walking down the aisle on a walker. and they stopped service for her. She was in her 90s. I looked back down. I didn't know who she was. I looked back down. The interim pastor said, "Reverend, I think she wants you." And me, I looked up, she's pointing at me. So I walked over to the edge of the pulpit. She said, "Ain't you Mary Henderson's boy?" She and my mother were bridesmaids in each other's wedding in 1938. I'm defined by being Mary Henderson's boy.
No question. Yes, sir.
The community produces you. In South Africa, I said I didn't want to go there too quickly. There is a saying, I wish all of you could learn it today. It's very easy. UMNTU. Say umtu.
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 You ain't open your mouth. Umtu.
Umtu.
Second word is NGUMNTU. Ngumtu.
Ubuntu.
Put a G in there. Ngumtu.
Ubuntu.
Umtu.
Umtu.
Ngumtu.
Ubuntu.
Third and last word is NGBANTU. Ngabantu.
Ngubantu.
Now you know the word Bantu, that's English. It's Ngabantu.
Ngubantu.
Umtu.
Umtu.
Ngumtu.
Ubuntu.
Ngabantu.
Ngubantu.
On a South African tour I was leading 30 years ago. While lecturing that morning, I was lecturing on the difference between Africans' understanding of personality, and I use BT as an example, who says, from Kenya, I am because we are,
Yes.
and because we are, I am.
Yes.
I have no identity out of the we, apart from the we. You all give me my identity. During the morning break, our South African tour guide, Tando, came up to me and said, "Reverend, do you know how we say in Zulu and in Xhosa what you said this morning?" I said a lot of things this morning. What are you talking about? He flipped through his notes. BT? I said, "Yeah." "You know how we say that?" I said, "Man, once you move past Sawubona, I'm lost." He said, "We say umtu, ngumtu, ngabantu." And he literally froze me. I stood there staring at him. He said, "You know what that means?" I said, "No, I don't know what that means." He said, "Umtu is an individual. Ngumtu can never be fully human. Ngabantu, unless he's in relationship with the community of other human beings."
I see.
I stood there staring at him. He said, "Do you know what Ntu means?" If you notice, Ntu is in each of those words. Mtu, Ngumtu, Ngabantu. The word for community is Ubuntu. They all have NTU. Do you know what NTU is? I said, "Tando, if I didn't know what Umtu was, how would I know it?" NTU. He said, "NTU is one of the Zulu words for breath of God."
Indeed.
I think our Bible says something about that. After that lump of clay, God breathed into their nostrils the breath of God, and they became living souls. Without the breath of God, we are not human, we're not fully human, and we cannot be a community without God's breath. I was staring at him because Baba Asa and I had just left Dallas, Texas, and he showed me this PowerPoint that he did on what blacks look like in Hawaii before the white man got there. Looked like homecoming in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was staring at Tonto for this reason. Do you know what Native Hawaiians call Europeans? Haole, exactly. Haole, haole, which in original Hawaii means those without breath. For you to take another people's country, you have no God in you. For you to rape other people's women, you have no God in you. When you get sick, they call a kahu. Hawaiians call a kahu, K-A-H-U, who is like the physician in the book of Jeremiah. Is there no physician there? Not a graduate of Meharry. Is there no balm in Gilead? Not a graduate of Howard, but one who knows the roots, one who knows what spirits dwell in what roots, one who knows what to prescribe from the ground, from the earth, from the trees, from the leaves. And when you are sick, the kahu comes and sits in front of you and stares at your chest in silence, then coordinates her or his kahu, is masculine or feminine, breath with your breathing. When you breathe out, they breathe in. When you breathe in, they breathe out. Why? Because they're trying to get the breath of God in you coordinated with the breath of God in them, because they believe whatever physical illness you have has a spiritual origin. And if they can find out what's going on with you spiritually, they can then diagnose properly, prescribe properly. If you have no breath, you have no God in you.
On that note, in the Reverend Moore, please, for blessing us with that breath, Baba, for continuing in the Bethel tradition. Asante Sana. And let's give a full round of applause as Reverend Moore comes to close us off. We're grateful for you, Baba. Always. With great pleasure.
Beloved, we want to thank the Bethel 21 team. Would you raise your hands, members of the team? Our staff, especially Lucille Knowles and Terry Johnson, the Howard University Office of the Chapel, Dr. Linda Jones of the Graduate School, and our hospitality team here at Metropolitan. We thank you all. We thank you all. Before you leave, let's spend a moment in silence, and I'd ask our senior spiritual leader here, Dr. Wright, to lead us in a word of prayer.
You want us up there?
If you ever see a turtle on top of a fence, standing on a fence post, remember that that turtle did not get there by himself. We stand today, O God, because we have been lifted up by Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, Reverend P.C., Reverend Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod Bethune, Frederick Douglass, Nana Yah Asantua, Prempeh the first and second. We stand on the shoulders and have been lifted up by Supervisor Pam DeVoe, Bishop William DeVoe, Adam Clayton Powell, Sr. and Jr., all of whom poured into Benjamin Mays, Martin Luther King, Langston Hughes, and host. A host that the writer of Hebrews describes of those who now cheer us on from the stands. We thank you for Daniel Coker. We thank you for Richard Allen. We thank you for Daniel Payne. We thank you for Elian Higbottom. We thank you for Kumasi, Dr. Gregory Carr. We thank you for Dr. Dana Williams Lamar. We thank you for Pastor Lamar. We thank you for those who do their best, their very best, to hold up the bloodstained banner in spite of what this world says. We thank you for this time together, for this day of remembrance and rejoicing. And as we leave this place of worship, learning and studying, we thank you for never leaving us alone. Grant us as we go from this place your peace, your power, and your pardon. Through Jesus Christ our Lord we pray. And all the people who believe God will say amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor.
Man, ain't no joke, brother.